Thank you, Dr. Dre. And I think now we will go to our second audience question. And again, we appreciate and thank you for sending in those questions and
Yes.
topics. It gives us some food for thought. So, Dr. Dre, I think I tossed the
Mhm.
first one over to Dr. Loretta first, so I'll
Mhm.
toss this one over to you. So, the
Okay.
second audience question says, our unit has lost a couple of team members. The remaining staff are suddenly feeling actually, are suddenly carrying double the workload. Leadership wants us to, quotation marks they have here, push through until they can hire in the next 3 to 5 months. But my team is already showing signs of strain. I'm reaching my limit, but I don't want to appear uncooperative or as if I can't handle the situation. Thoughts? So, what would you say to this audience member?
Mm. That's another great question. That's a tough one too. The first thought that came to my mind is those team members who left. Maybe they needed to leave, but that's a whole different side conversation. I'm just saying. I think we got to look at the big picture, but that's just me. But let me try to get a little bit in terms of being concrete here. I think reframing cooperative for leadership, I think, is really important, right? The push leadership says push through. The team's already cracking. So, and I think we talk about being cooperative doesn't mean silence, right? Bring the data, not complaints. Current workload per person, error/incident trend, if there's any. What else would you add? Projected state at month one, two, three, if nothing changes. I think reframing cooperative for leadership, I think, is important in this scheme. And I think also protecting the team's floor, not their ceiling, right? You can't stop the workload increase, but you
Mm,
can't decide what doesn't get sacrificed.
mm,
No unpaid overtime becomes mandatory. No one covers alone on the worst shift. Rotate who absorbs the hardest load would be some things I would think of as part of that process. And I think last, on your own limit, you model what you're asking your team to do too. You take the lead. If you don't name your own strain to someone, your leader, a peer, coach, you'll hit the wall. You're trying to help the rest of the team avoid. So I would just offer those thoughts as part of that. But that's a great question from the audience member.
Thank you, Dr. Dre. I love the where will the team be? What, 3, 4, 5 months later at this trend?
Yeah.
There'd be
Yeah.
no team. Everybody quits. No, I'm, I'm
That's it.
kidding. But no, on a serious note, Dr. Loretta, what might you add?
I absolutely agree with what you said, Dr. Cheryl and Dr. Dre too. So that I think that could legitimately happen. But I think one of the things we're honest, we're transparent. We let them know, hey, we understand that this is going on and really find out what the priorities are. You cannot do everything. So now that we're so short-staffed and companies do it all the time, then somebody else, okay, you've got a new hat to wear. It's like I'm already wearing 50 and my head weighing down, so you're adding another hat to me. So, what are the real priorities that are necessary to get done? And also, I think even for little wins or just sometimes just a compliment to people, I really appreciate what you're doing, but genuinely mean that. Don't just say it to say it, but genuinely mean that because when people are working under that extra low, it's good to let them know how much you appreciate them. You really do. We all like to know that we're appreciated when we're doing even our regular job, let alone extra.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Loretta. Jacqueline, anything you might add?
Well, I think what both Dr. Andre and what Dr. Loretta said really resonates for me. I also think it's just sometimes have allowing the employee to express how they feel really breeds a lot. They feel good just being able to share. I also think it may be time to also ask, well, what do you need from me? What are some things that you might want to see that can be helpful for you and still meet the deadlines that we have before us?
Mm,
And when we put it back for them to think about it, at least it allows them to feel like there's a partnership and that
mhm.
you understand and that you're trying to work through it as the best way you can together.
No, thank you.
Love that.
Yep, I agree with what everyone is saying. And I think certainly empathizing with the employee and encouraging the hearts of employees during that particular time is real important. And I also lean clearly into Dr. Dre's space and saying, as leaders, we have to assess the capacity that we have to deliver. And when what we're asking staff to do and what we've been given as resources to do, when it's not matching, it becomes important for us to be able to have those difficult conversations and say, our capacity is limited. And with this limited capacity, what are the priorities, as Dr. Loretta was saying? What are the priorities? What might need to be backburnered for a period of time while we are preparing to staff up? Because even though Dr. Dre and I were kidding, over a period of time, if you have people stressed and strained for too long, then they may opt out before
Sure.
you can staff up again.
That's
So
right.
it is our responsibility as leaders to look at what we've been asked to do, to assess whether or not we have the human and other resources to do it, and then to have those difficult conversations with our upline as it relates to capacity and boundaries and priorities, so then we can give clear direction and realistic expectations to staff to move forward would be my thought on that as well. So thank you again to our audience for that
Yeah,
question. Dr.
excellent.
Dre, toss it to you.
Dr. Cheryl, before break, you were talking, Jacqueline, about, again, really helping leaders manage their own stress and talking about healthy coping. Jacqueline, we talk about that piece, but we also talk about the boundaries. And boundaries can be really tough for leaders. Boundaries. How can leaders set boundaries without feeling guilty? If there's such a
Yeah,
thing.
good. I think it's by reframing. The reframing is not necessarily for what other people hear,
Mm,
it's what we hear even within our own self. What are we saying about boundaries, right? And so reframing the boundaries as leadership hygiene. If I look at what I need to do to take care of my hygiene when it comes to leadership, then we're not withdrawing. You're protecting your ability to lead well, which will allow you to maybe move through and not burn out, where the team will suffer. And then they're more of an act of service to yourself and to the people around you. I had on one of my travels, I listened to the entertainment on American Airline, and they have like TED Talks and different things that you can listen to. One of the talks that I listened to one day was by Yasmin Cheyenne,
mm,
and she said how boundaries make space for the sweet things in life.
mm,
And she uses the acronym SUGAR to represent boundaries. And she says, sugar, the S, say no.
mm,
And then U is use your voice. G, give to yourself too.
mm,
A, always check within. R, resist the urge to overgive. And if each one of us take the time to maintain our own sugar jars, we'd have the freedom that so many of us are seeking. The freedom to nurture relationships, to be the best that we can be for ourselves and others, freedom to see new places, and even the freedom to just be. With a full sugar jar, I'm sorry, we can be our best, excuse me, we can be our best self. And this also can be contagious to the people around us.
I love that. Sugar. Love it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sugar is great. I'll try to write down all those acronyms to remember for my own
Yeah,
self-care. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's try to flip the script just a little bit because sometimes leaders don't realize when they are actually stressing out their teams, and it could be the communication process or the lack of communicating well with them. So, what patterns do you feel tend to create unnecessary stress on a team?
Mhm.
I think the rapid fire messages, last minute changes, unclear priorities. The tone that I think matters is really being able to be clear in our communication without the panic. Sometimes we communicate in this rushed way where people around us feel it. And so managing and what am I feeling in my own body? Because if I'm feeling the tension, I'm more than likely passing that on to my team as well.
That's good.
No, I appreciate that. And I think all these pieces tie together. I'll give Kat Donovan also a shout out. Next up, their Rising Star programs always have wonderful speakers. And there was a speaker, her name was Kat Donovan, I believe is her last name. All right, or Kate, actually, it's K-I-T, I think, if I'm visualizing her name correctly. But anyway, she talked about boundaries, as Andre, you're asking Jacqueline about boundaries and how important setting boundaries are in order to not build resentment. And so also going back to what Dr. Loretta was saying, where you're saying you can be a lot more generous when you don't have resentment, and you can have a lot more capacity to be generous if you're not resentful because you've set those boundaries. And so I say all these things are so important. And then Jacqueline, as you talked about the leader taking care of themselves, I think that probably also folds into what you were talking about as relates to the tone and all those other things. So tying into that, because I think all those things are huge. And we know psychological safety really plays a role in how people show up and what they're willing to say or not say and push against or not push against. So how can leaders create an environment where employees do feel safe to speak up?
I think what creates that safe space is to respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness. When an employee raises a concern, we want the leader's reaction to be, tell me more, and avoid what is referred to as, I would say, defensive words, which are you, should, ought, always, never, and then lastly, but. Defensive words are usually felt in the messenger's body, but it's also felt in the receiver's body. And so they become closed. And what we want, especially in a meeting, in a team, we want everyone to feel relaxed and open to be able to share because it stimulates each other and we can get more done, really, usually. And so I always tell people that there's a martial arts called Aikido. And Aikido disarms or neutralizes attack. And so it moves away from you rather than in karate, it may be attack, right? Which emphasizes the defensive strikes or punches. And then you want to move away from that. So if we create an environment that's Aikido to disarm, then we're allowing the curiosity to be there and we're allowing for more open communication and safety in that communication as well.
No, I love that. I can reflect on my own behavior and having said straight up no
Mm-hmm.
to staff about a suggestion. And then I have to laugh at myself as I look at their faces. Their faces, they don't, words may not come out their mouth, but their look says like, all righty then. And then I have to say, okay, help me get to yes. I'm a no at the moment. Help me get to yes to open that conversation back up. So I I can relate to what you're saying, and certainly be aware of my need to shift at times. So, Dr. Dre, let me toss it to you.